said, to kind of introduce what this class is, like Jeff said, it's called ALICE. Without getting into the acronym right away, basically what it is, it's a program of empowerment more than anything. Doesn't just apply to schools, it applies to workplace, applies to social gatherings. If you go to the mall and shop in Rapid City or wherever you may go, you go to the grocery store, you go to Walmart, that's a dangerous experience in itself. It can apply basically anywhere, anytime, with anybody. So hopefully you'll get that out of it more so than the school aspect. But we concentrate on the school aspect because that's at the forefront of our psyche these days, is all of the shootings that are taking place in schools. But we have shootings that take place in movie theaters, churches, shopping malls, grocery stores, post offices, you name it, it takes place everywhere. So we need to tell people what their options are when they're confronted with violent individuals and violent attack. We told you the acronym of ALICE is alarm, lockdown, inform, counter, and evacuate. We're going to go over each of those specific sections, kind of explain what we mean about those. But what's important is that ALICE, even though it comes ALICE, doesn't have to follow that particular pattern. We're not recommending that there's any set standard procedure that you have to do this before you do this. You have to do this before you do this. You know, we want to give you the options to do whatever it is that you need to do. It may be evacuate, and that's it. It may be lockdown, and that's it. Okay. We're going to talk a little bit later, and when we talk about lockdown, it's not the standard philosophy of lockdown that we were all taught in schools and that our kids are being taught in schools. It's something that that Alice is going to bring up, that we need to get away from that and to empower our kids to be survivors. Okay. So hopefully during the process I'm going to show you some statistics. Everything that we talk about is going to be fact-based. There's no pull stuff out of the hat. It's all statistics that have been gathered over the years. When they're out in front of you, it's hard to deny it. Okay. So with that said, we'll go ahead and get started. And also I'd like to say that anytime during the presentation, if you have any questions or comments even, or feedback, by all means, let us have it, because I adapt this program every time I do a class for different things. And then I even had some comments about changing the slide colors a little bit to make them a little bit more presentable, so that's something I'm probably going to do in the future too. So if you have criticism or compliment or something, by all means let me know. There's nothing we're going to worry about. Now I put these three words up on the board: liability, accountability, and survivability. Okay. During this presentation, I want you to think about these three words. Okay. These three words are very important when it comes to ALICE, because we're talking about liability. What do we mean by liability? Well, if something happens in the workplace or in school or anywhere, somebody's liable for what happens, right? We're liable for our own actions and the actions that we take. Our employers may be liable for training us or not training us on how we're supposed to respond. There may be a liability on behalf of the shooter doing something, or the violent individuals we may talk about. Accountability. You know, we're accountable. Who's accountable? Well, employers are accountable for the safety of their employees. Schools are accountable for the safety of their students and their employees. Malls are accountable for the safety of their patrons, as well as any business out there, right? Plus, we're also accountable to ourselves to make sure that we know what we can do and what we can't do in certain circumstances. Okay. Survivability. Very important word, because ALICE concentrates a lot on survivability. In any violent encounter, survivability is key. That's what everything is centered around. So we want to be able to survive a violent encounter. Okay? So that's very important. Now, Department of Labor and the Department of Justice came out with a definition of workplace violence. And as any government agency does, they like to put up these long-winded definitions of what things are. So they did this for workplace violence, and they consider it to be any act or threat of physical violence, harassment, intimidation, or other threatening, disruptive behavior that occurs at the work site. Okay? Ranges from threats and verbal abuse to physical assaults and even homicide. Okay? So that's their definition of workplace violence. So you can see it doesn't necessarily mean somebody getting killed. It can be intimidation, it can be disruptive behavior. How many of us deal with disruptive behavior on a daily basis? You know, so take that into account. OSHA's workplace violence in 2015 came out with statistics that basically said that workplace violence affects and involves employees, clients, customers, and visitors. Homicide is currently the 4th leading cause of fatal occupational injuries in the United States. Now that's huge, isn't it? The 4th leading cause of fatal occupational injuries in the world, in the United States, is workplace violence. And according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, okay, out of the 40,547 fatal workplace injuries that occurred in the United States in 2010, 506 of them were workplace homicides. So you can do the math to figure out what that percentage is. But the big one is, homicide is the leading cause of death for women in the workplace. Leading cause of death for women in the workplace is homicide. That is huge too. So however it manifests itself, workplace violence is a major concern, should be a major concern for both employers and employees. Okay? So, and that's an OSHA statistic too. As it says, nearly 2 million American workers report having been victims of workplace violence each year, but a lot more cases go unreported. It can strike anywhere, anytime, and nobody's immune to it. So you figure out of the 2 million that are reported, how many are unreported, and it could probably be way higher than that. Research has identified factors that increase the risk of violence for some workers at certain work sites. Taking money from the public, working with volatile and unstable people, okay, working alone or in isolated areas also contribute to the potential for violence. So basically it's saying that if you work in any public sector job, be it government or otherwise, you're susceptible to workplace violence because you either take money or you deal with people daily on a daily basis. And those people are very unpredictable and you never know what they're going to do. In 2013, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported more than 23,000 significant injuries due to assault at work. 70% of these assaults were in healthcare and social service settings. How many social service people do we have? A couple? Okay. Healthcare and social service workers are almost 4 times as likely to be injured as a result of violence than the average private sector worker. Probably because of the nature of the clientele. Okay. People don't come to social workers because they're feeling great, usually, and they don't come into healthcare because they're feeling great. So I think it's just kind of an indicative thing. And of course, Department of Labor also came up, and Department of Justice came up with a definition of an active shooter and what workplace violence is. And they call an active shooter as a hostile intruder, actively engaged in killing or attempting to kill people in a confined and populated area. And it goes on to say what it can include, which is firearms, bladed weapons, cars, but it always constitutes deadly physical force. And like it says, most active shooter situations are very unpredictable, evolve quickly, and are over within minutes. And that's one of the core things that we're going to talk about with this Alice thing. And like the sheriff said, you know, you can't trust on law enforcement to be your savior in these instances. Because as we're going to go into this and we're going to show, the times that it takes for these things to happen are very fast. Okay, usually over before in less than 10 minutes. And we'll show you how that call for services generated and how it goes about, and why I'm saying law enforcement has nothing to do with it usually, okay? And again, the statistics will show that. This is a U.S. Department of Labor and Bureau of Labor Statistics thing that tells us about FBI workplace violence statistics from 93 to 99 for that 6 years. This table basically shows you the association, the offender, the victim there on the left. Work association, strangers, work associates, intimates such as husbands, wives, boyfriends, other relatives, and other acquaintances. And it tells you the number of these that are involved. So there was a total number of 6,316 of these workplace homicides, okay, in that 6-year period. Out of that, 100% of them were associated with their work. What that means basically is that if you hadn't been in the job that you were doing, you wouldn't have been a victim. Okay, so it's showing that workplace violence is indicative of working somewhere. Okay, which leave it to the government to come up with that. Then it talks about strangers that are used as are the association about 84% of the time, and then it goes down from there with work associates, husbands and wives, and other relatives and things like that. So it basically just says that workplace violence is people that are associated with the work that you do. It's not somebody that just walks in off the street and decides they're going to kill a bunch of people in the courthouse or kill a bunch of people in the mall. It's usually somebody that's associated with that work environment.